Welcome back to another Five Reasons Fight special. The last time we did this, we discussed paths to victory for Saul Canelo Alvarez and Terence Bud Crawford, as well as implications for their legacy for their mega fight that took place on September 13th at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. And now we're back because history has been made. Terence Crawford is the first male boxer to be undisputed in three divisions in the four-belt era, and he did it while going up two weight divisions to beat the bigger man. I can't think of anyone better I'd rather be speaking to about this topic than the man who said it would happen this way. Please welcome our friend of the show from Reed BBS Television, our guy Sean Reed. How are you, man? And thank you for being here.
Mateo, my brother, was good.
It's so good to have you back, man. You kind of remind me of a prophet the way you said it would happen, and now we are here. I'm so glad you're back. Um, Getting straight into business, this was a fight that did not follow the normal pay-per-view model. Thank goodness. It was on Netflix and it had 41 million reported viewers. From your perspective, how much did this live up to the hype or the billing of the biggest fight of the century?
So I'm glad you started with the Netflix piece of it because the other time I recall Netflix doing this was Tyson and Jake Paul. And yeah, we knew the fight was going to be a scam, but the story ended up being all of the buffering and the issues that people had even watching the fight. I recall watching Mike walk to the ring, and then my Netflix started acting up. So it wasn't until like round two or three when I could clearly watch the fight. So to that Netflix point, there were no issues at all, technically. The cleanest stream I've ever watched for a fight of this magnitude. So in that respect, it was a job well done, certainly.
You know, the naturally, I should have expected this, but the public did not see the fight the way the official judges did. The official cards were 115 to 113 on two of them, which is a 7-5 round, and a 116 to 112. The people thought that was bogus. Some of our contemporaries and the media thought it was as well. How close did you see this fight?
It was I could see 8-4, 7-5. I could see that. I wasn't upset with the scorecards. They were a tad closer than I saw the fight being, but all in all, I wasn't mad at 8-4, 7-5. That's about the fight that we saw because scoring is subjective,
Mhm.
and Crawford was giving ground a lot, which to the naked eye appeared may seem like you're not necessarily engaging in the fight at all times. So if there's not much happening and one guy is moving away from the action, I can see where some people are inclined to score that for the guy who's pressing the fight and making the fight. I both sides of it.
Right. At the post-fight press conference, Canelo talked about not being able to hit him with his best shots. Technically, what was Terence doing aside from trying to create some separation that was making Canelo miss these power shots, of course?
What I noticed, he kept his Terence kept his left glove very high. He fought southpaw like the entire fight.
Mhm.
Well, the weapon of choice against the southpaw is a straight right hand, lead right hand, which Canelo has a good one anyway. He landed them, but a few times he landed, his glove would just graze Bud's arm or just graze Bud's glove, taking off just that little extra bit of oomph that I call it, just to soften the blow just a little bit. That was one adjustment that Bud, he was prepared for. They studied very well for Canelo, obviously. And just the subtle movement. I've heard some criticize him for running. At no point was he running. Was he moving? Yes, he had to move. He was the smaller, weaker guy. Just the movements, some subtle clinching whenever Canelo would get close. But more than anything, it was the fact that he had that arm there. He was training on that. So the few times Canelo did land some right hands to the head, it seemed Crawford's arm or his glove kind of picked it off just a little bit, just enough to where he could take it.
How much of a surprise was it that Crawford, well, there were some shots that did get in, especially in the earlier rounds where some right hands from Canelo to the body touched Crawford. It did seem like he took the sting a little bit off of him as he was going back, but how much of a surprise was it that he was able to take at least the best of what Canelo gave him?
It was very surprising because, especially to the body, now these were singular shots.
Mhm.
Canelo hit him with some legitimate hard body shots. Did he catch him with a body shot flurry? No, but he landed some real hard hooks to the bodies throughout the fight. And Crawford, I don't know if he's got a good poker face or what have you, but he showed no effects at all. He also didn't, he was never visibly tired. I told myself, as much weight as he's gained, and it appeared to be muscle that he gained, which is actually heavier than fat, I just knew at some point there would be that obvious round that he would have to take off to recoup, and we never saw that. So kudos to him for that. He never got tired, and he took the blows much better than any of us could have imagined.
Speaking about the scoring that, of course, is subjective. Everyone is looking for different things, but at what point when you were watching did you think, man, Crawford is in control, or did you ever think that at all getting to the cards?
Honestly, it wasn't until round 9,
Okay.
the big flurry at the beginning where Crawford, I don't know if anyone's hit Canelo with more consecutive shots than Crawford did in that little exchange. But up until that point, it was, to me, the fight was still kind of in the balance, which is why I'm not so mad at the scorecards. In fact, if I'm remembering correctly, Canelo may have won the 8th round. So Crawford came out wanting to make a statement. He could see that the fight was also in the balance, and he fought with a degree of desperation in that round. And that's, to me, that's when he seized control, and he never gave it back from that point.
I see. One of the things that was definitely a surprise is when Canelo tried to, well, he definitely tried to put the pressure on him early to, force him to make him go back. But there was one instance, I believe it was in round 6, where Crawford eluded Canelo from the ropes and he stuck him with a hard left hand. And th that seemed to be one of those shots where Canelo was like, man, okay, he's stronger than I thought. But this is obviously a very noteworthy achievement, very significant for Terence Crawford and his family. But what does this do to elevate him in the sport? And is it enough to make him the face of boxing as he says he is?
If he is, it's kind of a late arrival to a party, and it's no fault of Bud's.
Mhm.
He couldn't get the fights to put him at this pedestal. He just got the Spence fight 3 fights ago. He just fought Canelo last. I blame the reason he's not bigger than he should be is Bob Arum and Top Rank. He spent the bulk of his career under the Top Rank label. Manny Pacquiao was sitting over there under the Top Rank label. At no point did Bob Arum pressure Manny to fight Bud or vice versa. In fact, Bob Arum complained about how he couldn't market Terence Crawford, which I remember in the moment thinking, I've never seen a promoter, while this guy is still under your promotion, criticize him like that. But then I remembered Bob Arum is also notorious for under promoting Floyd Mayweather. So let's think about it, Mateo. This fight, Canelo and Bud, was going to determine the best fighter since Floyd Mayweather, right?
Mhm.
Ended up being Bud Crawford. Bob Arum promoted both of those guys, Floyd Mayweather and Terence Crawford, at the beginning of his career, at the beginning of their careers, I should say. And he willingly let both of them walk, and then both of them flourished once they left Bob Arum. So, no, Crawford is not the face of boxing. He's not. It's like if you beat the pound for pound guy in the sport, that doesn't necessarily make you pound for pound. The face of boxing is about more than just how good you are, because there's none better than Crawford right now. There's a marketability piece. There's an endorsement piece. And Crawford, he's a reserved guy. He likes to be on the lake fishing. He doesn't really want the attention. He doesn't really want to be in music videos and on award shows and stuff. So in terms of promoting the sport and being that poster boy for it, he's just not that guy. And that's through no fault of his own. it's through the fault of the people who promoted him early in his career, in my opinion.
How I see, but it also is kind of hard to be the face of boxing when you've only been fighting once a year for the past 5 years. But
And that part too, yeah, you got to be active. Well said.
of course, and you as well. But with where he's at right now, he's really got a ton of options because he's king of 168 at super middleweight. He has hinted that he would go down to 160. Has no interest in 154. At the press conference said 175 is probably too much. With who is left for him to take out?
I think he should only go for try to get middleweight, all the belts, aligned, and then go for undisputed there. I heard Turkey a la Sheik throw out David Benavidez coming back to 68. I don't like that fight for Crawford at all. Just because you could beat a short super middleweight, a short old super middleweight like Canelo, that has no bearing on you fighting a 6-foot, 28-year-old killer like David Benavidez. I mean, Canelo didn't fight Benavidez for a reason. So I don't think Crawford should even entertain that. Crawford, I don't think should even defend the titles that he won. Yeah, you won them. You became the champion. You're not a super middleweight, bud. And aside from Canelo or Benavidez, there's no money fight at the division that I see.
I, I, that's an interesting point about not defending the title. I think back to Sugar Ray Leonard in his one fight, or not his one fight. Well, when he went up to fight Don Lalonde at super, or not super lightweight, excuse me, at light heavyweight, he took his title and he said he gave it away or relinquished it in like a day or two because he knew he couldn't hang there. I know it's a different division, but the same thinking applies. I understand what you're saying. He's not really a super middleweight. This was
He's
just
not.
he's just an incredible achievement. One last thing on Bud before we transition to Canelo. At the press conference for Canelo, he was asked a question, and he said that Terence Crawford is better than Floyd Mayweather Jr. And who would be more qualified than someone who fought both? But what do you think of such a complimentary statement?
My immediate thought is, so I'm not the biggest Floyd Mayweather fan. I love his talent.
Yeah.
I loved the pretty boy Floyd, the early Floyd. I loved him. But this money made character, he's a turnoff. So I thought it was funny because I know how sensitive Floyd is about being considered TBE. And I don't have any losses. So I know, and I think Canelo knew, whether he really believes it or not, I think he knew that little jab would bother Floyd. So I kind of liked it in that respect. But also, I mean, Canelo can only go off of what he experienced. And yes, he lost to both of them, but I would say neither man hurt him, but I would say Bud, was more offensive. And I don't have stats to back it up. Just watching the fight, Bud seemed more offensive in his fight against Canelo than Floyd was in his fight with Canelo. Plus, he fought a better version of Canelo to me. Canelo was young, wet behind the ears, breath smelling like Similac when he fought Floyd. He was older, a little bit past his prime, but all the experience in the years that he brought into that ring, he was a better fighter against Bud than he was against Floyd. No doubt about that to me.
A moment ago, we talked about David Benavidez, and this was a fight that Canelo Alvarez did not want to see at 168 pounds. He could have had it done. And right now he's in a weird spot because he could keep having money fights because he's a huge attraction at home and at the gate. But what does it matter if you're not fighting for titles? And so when you think about him, what should he be doing right now or looking to do?
So on the Benavidez piece, I think that's the worst thing about all of this.
Oh,
He should have never neglected Benavidez because that's going to be a stain on his record. And now it's at a point where he probably can't beat him. 2-3 years ago, I think Canelo would have beaten him. Now, he saw Benavidez as kind of, he's not afraid of him. Don't get it twisted. No fighters at this level are afraid of anybody. But he saw it as a bad business decision. And that's kind of the fact he didn't want to fight Benavidez eventually led him to Bud Crawford, which got him beat anyway. To me, it would have been better if you're going to take an L, take that L to the young lion who's bigger than you, Benavidez, than this smaller guy who was really a welterweight, fought one fight at 54, then jumped two weights. It would have been a better loss to have fought Benavidez, who Canelo might still beat him. Like, Benavidez gets hit a lot. You know what I'm saying? He's just big and strong and applies pressure. That doesn't mean Canelo couldn't beat him. So the fact now you've lost to a smaller guy and you still haven't faced Benavidez, that's not he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, still a great fighter. But in terms of how great, this series of events has brought him down a peg or so.
I see what you're saying because before this fight happened, Turkey Al Sheikh was calling for Canelo Alvarez versus Hamza Shiraz, and it really doesn't have the same flavor to it now that Canelo took a loss. When you're thinking about him, all that's really left for him, aside from money, is legacy, and it would really be very ballsy to go up to 175 a third time and to try to take David Benavidez's WBC title. That would be the honorable move. I'm not sure how it would go because Canelo does look older. When I in the my last review of him at 175 against Dimitri Bivol, his arms didn't look as fast on the jab, on the counters, or really, and he didn't look as fast at all. But if he wants to make a legacy fight, I think that would be the route to go. But circling back to this fight with Bud Crawford, you said the avoiding Benavidez led him there, but this was at the end of the day against the smaller guy. Terence had no experience at super middleweight. How much of a reputational hit does Canelo Alvarez take? Because at the end of the day, this was a super fight. So how much can it be?
Um, because Crawford was already a known, established, great fighter, I said before the fight, whoever wins this, they're the best guy since Floyd. This is officially that person's era. So losing to a guy who was in that discussion isn't so bad. When you hear lost to a smaller guy, to watch the fight, he didn't look much smaller than Canelo. He gained the weight. I don't know that any smaller guy that's moved up has done it as well as Crawford, to show no ill effects from being hit, to show no fatigue whatsoever. When Michael Spinks moved up and fought Larry Holmes, he showed fatigue. He was bothered by the shots that Larry Holmes landed. When Roy fought John Ruiz, yeah, it was an easy fight, but you could see Roy visibly breathing out of his mouth at times, just catching his wind. So for Bud to do it how he did it, the fighter that Bud was, I don't personally hold too much against Canelo. I really don't. He lost the fight. He's an old, 35? He's a very old 35. He's been fighting since he was 15. There's circumstances that we have to weigh in there. It diminishes Canelo a little bit, but not drastically. Not drastically.
I see. To your point about the fighters who have not looked as good as Bud Crawford going up two divisions to take out the bigger man, I think there's only one person who had an excellent performance like this, and that would be Manny Pacquiao against Oscar De La Hoya. And that was at the end of Oscar De La Hoya's career. To take notice that he got retired after that fight. Excuse me, Sean, you've been so awesome, but I just got one more for you before I let you head on out of here. A moment ago, you said that Crawford shouldn't even try to defend the titles at 168 pounds, but there is this guy there named Hamza Shiraz who has only fought there once, doesn't have much experience either, and while annihilating Edgar Berlanga, he is someone who is 6'3", and his reach advantage is slightly longer than Bud Crawford's. And this kind of gets me thinking, when Bud, before he moved up, when he was going to when he's at 154, there was almost like a little bit of background chatter about him and Fundora, and that kind of seemed interesting because of the Fundora was one of those guys, or one of the few guys who has a longer reach than Terence, and considering fight between Terence and Hamza Shiraz at 168. Would that be something you're interested in with stylistically, or would it be too dangerous for Bud?
It would the risk reward isn't there.
Okay.
Bud's 5'8". You don't want to fight a 6'3" guy. Even if Bud stopped him in the first round, which he wouldn't, he wouldn't get any more praise for that than he did for beating Earl Spence. He'd probably get less praise for that. But on the flip side, he may not beat Hamza Shiraz. I mean, if I'm Hamza, I'm just staying long. You know, you're the smaller guy. I'm going to make you get inside this telephone pole reach that I have. And at that point, you have to be smart and be a matchmaker and recognize, Bud Crawford, you still have that O. You're still undefeated. You don't risk it against a guy like that who's not going to get you. There's not going to be this big parade or celebration for Bud after beating Hamza Shiraz. So don't even, the matchmaker in me wouldn't even entertain that fight if I'm handling Bud Crawford. I wouldn't even entertain him.
I see. Sean, you've been so awesome. Thank you for coming back. I've been hanging on to every word, and I thought this was sick, and I know the people listening will too. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Till next time.